This looks about right. All right. Okay, that's about right. Me. All right. Greetings to the heartland. This is Mark, and I am coming to you from Baker's Green Acres. And I'm excited to be here. This is going to be our Wednesday night installment of the Anyone Can Farm live chat, where we like to talk about anything having to do with homesteading, small farms, or just plain living. How's that sound? Just plain living stuff. And so I'm here with my trusty assistant, Jill. She's sitting here manning the laptop computer. And I'm fireside here by my wood stove. And I've been out today. I think I have some pretty good color in my cheeks. Happy haircut day, by the way. You may have noticed that my wife went wild on my hair and my beard last night when I gave her free rein to cut my hair. She said, "Can I trim your beard just a little bit? Trim your beard just a little bit." So she did. That's okay. Grows back. I don't mind. All right. I had about a million things to talk about today. And I don't know how this actually fits in, but this is something that happened today, and I was really thrilled to be able to sit down and talk about it. And I just think there's something to it. You're gonna have to excuse me a minute while I blow my nose. Doing this tonight. We've been doing this for quite a while now. What, about 6 months we've been doing this? Would it be 6 months? Or maybe longer?
I think we're coming up on a year.
Oh, okay. Well, how time flies when you're having fun.
Really.
And it is true, if you're doing something that you really like, it's not work to you. And maybe that's how that fits in with what happened today. I actually had an awesome day today. I really had an awesome day. Had a good night's sleep last night. Had a great breakfast this morning. Went out. It was dark and cold, but then it got light and it started to warm up a little bit. It was overcast all day, but still it was just a nice day. And I had a project that I was going to work on in my shop, so I had to move some stuff around, and I went out on a little ride with my Jeep just to warm it up, like to start it up every once a week at least, even in the wintertime. And I don't use it a lot in the wintertime. But as I was out, I thought, I'm going to make a quick video just to give people a heads up that we're doing this, because there's sort of a principle that goes on when a lot of people are kind of thinking the same direction. So we have no idea how many people come to this live chat. I mean, I don't think we can really trust that little number there, because it just doesn't add up with the watch time hours that come up at the end of it. And I don't really care, but I just think that there's there's more people that care about this type of stuff than we might think, right? So I made this video about, I stopped out in the field, and there's a tree that had gone over out there, and I've been stopping and looking at that tree a lot. And because it's a tree that when we first got here, before we moved here, we would discuss this tree that's out in the middle of this field, and it huge trunk, probably 36 inches or better, and great big canopy, and all around it nothing but grass. I mean, for a long ways. It's in the middle of one of my hay fields. And me and my wife, before we came here, we said, you know what? We're going to go out there and have a picnic. We've had some fun with that tree, haven't we, Jill? Yeah, we have. And I guess it was 3 years ago now I said 2 this morning, but we determined it's 3. We had a bad storm. The tree was hollowed out and down it went. Big, big, big tree. Lots and lots of wood, and it broke off right at the bottom. So the tree was it was done. It was going to die, and it was kind of uh, mixed emotions when that happened because it was such a beautiful tree. I found out what the nature of that tree was. Why did somebody leave a tree right in the middle of the hayfield? And then we thought, oh, well, maybe they would tie the animals up there when they're working in the fields. But you're really only working in the fields a couple of times, and it's not always real hot when you're working in the field. So I don't know. We didn't know, but then an old guy told me what the story was on it. Is when this land was homesteaded out. In other words, the U.S. government took possession of the land after it was logged off by logging companies. And then the U.S. government made it available to citizens 80 acres at a time if they were willing to homestead it. And homesteading meant they had to show an improvement on the land, I think, in the first 5 years. Okay, I'm not really sure. And that prevented people from just saying, oh, yeah, give me 3 of those, and then reselling them off. So what a guy had to do here was they had to first, what they did is they farmed in between the stumps, which was very difficult. But in those days, they couldn't get out there with a dozer and just doze those stumps out. It was tougher than that. And some of the stumps that are around here that are still in the woods are big. These were big, are big. These were big trees. Norwegian pines is what they're called. And the guy that told me about it said, yeah, pull some of that stuff off. It makes great fire starter. And it does. The stumps are still out there in the woods because there's so much pitch in this Norwegian pine that they don't decompose very fast. So anyway, they would pick a tree out in the middle of all these other trees and all these stumps, and they would use that as the anchor tree. And they would put a winch anchored down to that tree with probably a cable or chains. And the winch was powered by oxen, 1 or 2. And then as the oxen walked on this winch, it's sort of like a treadmill, it would take up the slack on a big cable or a big chain and go click, click, click very slowly. But nevertheless, it would, and they would pull stumps with that. So they had crews that traveled around and did this for people. And a guy could maybe afford to get out 4 or 5 stumps, and they would. And then the next year, somebody, they'd come back and they'd take 4 or 5 more out or something. So anyway, that's why the anchor tree was there. I have 2 of them on my place. Now, actually, if this one's gone over, I only have 1. The other one's a pretty big tree, too. So, long story short, I told you that I was going to go out and cut some of that up today, and I've been savoring that. I was really looking forward to going out and doing that. And that's what's burning now. That's what's burning in my wood stove. And I went out there with my 3 youngest sons. We had our tractor, had a small wagon behind it, a Jeep trailer actually is what it is, and 2 chainsaws. And the 2 little guys were everything that we cut, they were loading into the Jeep trailer. And in an hour, we had it full. Jeep trailer's not really that big, but we started, when a tree goes over, you start out at the tip and you cut it off, and that'll be your brush. And anything smaller than that, we were cutting off, and then we started to section it up, 18-inch pieces. And then the kids were picking them up and filling it. And then my older son, Keith, had to take off and go do something. So me and the little boys were out there, and we sat down and we were just taking a break. And I told them that when I was stationed in Japan, where my 3rd oldest son is stationed right now at Yokota Air Base, that was my first duty assignment, and it's his first duty assignment with the U.S. Air Force. that I had a magazine that I used to look at all the time, and it had four-wheel drive pickup trucks in it that guys had fixed up. And at the time in 84, 85, not everybody was doing that. And they weren't really around. Those trucks weren't around, and they certainly weren't around in Japan. And I thought, you know what? When I get back to the States, that's what I want to do. And there was a picture that I can still remember it. It was a dark brown 66 Chevrolet 3/4 ton pickup, and the guy named it Woody's Wood Hauler, and he took a picture of it full of cordwood in the back, and I just thought that was so cool. And when you're in Japan, you're totally separated from American lifestyle, and I just really wanted to do that. And so I was there for 3 years. It was an overseas long tour, and I never got really to do anything like that there so much. You couldn't even buy a gas chainsaw over there. But I did have a wood stove in my house there, and I lived out in town, and there's a lot to that whole story. There's a reason why Japanese people don't have wood stoves in their house, and it's because the houses are very close together and they're just wood and paper. And the Japanese people are very cautious about fires, house fires. That's why they don't do that. I didn't know that, and I just went ahead and did it, and it terrified the neighborhood that I lived in. But nobody said anything to the gaijin, me. Nobody said anything to me. But anyway, so I'm telling my boys about that, and I said, you know what? I've arrived. I have the pickup that I always wanted. I have a 1974 F-250 Ford pickup with a flatbed on it, toolbox. I got a real nice plow on it, and it's still a work in progress. I've had it for 20 years at least, 22 years now. And I have the best chainsaws that you can get. I use Husqvarna's. Some people are going to argue with that, but I like Husqvarna's. I have two of them, nice ones. One's a big one, one's a little one. And I was able to go out there and start cutting this tree up. And every time I cut, I put a new chain, brand new chain on one of the saws today. And every time I cut it, I thought, this is great. I'm going to take this back and heat the house with this. I got my two buddies helping me, three actually, but Keith took off and got in a car accident while he was gone. But it was great. I mean, and I thought, why is this so great? And then as I'm cutting, I think, what if I could do this for a living, cut wood for a living? And then I said, no, because if I ever delivered this wood to somebody and some of the pieces were like this big around, like that long, people wouldn't like that. And people would always want to give you less money than what you think it's worth. And it's a lot of hard work, and it doesn't really pay very good. And so I thought, no, why is it that it's a turnoff when you have to do it as a job? And I got to thinking that, in the economy that I'm trying to live in, I can enjoy this process. But if I had to do this to make a living, cut wood to make a living, I don't think I'd enjoy it, because I'd be doing it for 12 hours a day, and I don't think I'd really enjoy it. I don't know, maybe if I'm making the point that I wanted to make, but we are going to talk about things, homesteading and farming, and I don't think that our first point that we're trying to make is, this will make you some money. Because a lot of the processes that I do here, I enjoy the process and I get good stuff out of it, but I don't make money doing it. I don't, or very little money out of it. And so you have to adjust what your currency is, what you value. You have to adjust that way of thinking. So tonight, my wife was out Christmas shopping, probably for me, and called and said, well, I'm going to be late, so go ahead and eat. And if I have to cook, I get really creative. And, we just butchered two beef It's going to be 2 weeks this coming Saturday. And so there was some meat down in the cooler that I was just sitting there, and it was some a really nice piece of meat about this big, right behind the head on a beef. There's two of them that are about yay long and about that big around. So I carved about 4 steaks off of that, and I might have carved them a little bit thick, about an inch is really where you want them. These had to be like an inch and an eighth, inch and a quarter. My mistake. Brought those babies in the house, warmed up the cast iron skillet, put some butter in there, and fried those steaks. And I tell you what, I just got paid really well for the work that I did. I got paid really well. That was a good steak. Now here I'm going from cutting wood to a good steak, but yeah, I don't know if I'm making a point. But anyway, I'm here and I will answer your questions and I will talk about whatever we want to talk about. We have a couple of things. I still have a puppy. We still have Silver, and Silver's 20 weeks old. The lady who was going to take Silver had a medical issue, and then by the time she was well enough to take him, Silver's a farm dog now. He's not going to do well riding in her car, in her SUV, and in her small place in town. He's not going to do well. She has one that does well there, but I said to her, I don't know if this is going to work for you. I feel like we're setting you up for a failure, but Silver would be an excellent asset to anyone's farmstead. It would be the end of your predation problems. And I'm going to throw something in on the deal, and we want $500 for him. All our puppies, we get $500. And he's 20 weeks old, so he's not really a puppy anymore. Well, he's a puppy, but he's pretty good size. He's probably 40 pounds. They're big dogs. I will throw in dinner at Baker's Green Acres. If you come and get this puppy and you come around dinner time, we'll feed you. Okay? With the celebrity family here, you'll get to eat with us. Okay? I'll throw that deal in. And an autographed picture of Jill. I'll throw that in too. Okay?
There are no pictures of me.
There will be. There will be. Some other business. We have 2 Holstein calves that are around 750 pounds, maybe a little bigger. I'm not really sure. And they've been with us we got them last winter. They've been with us all summer. They're perfectly healthy. They're going to be outstanding milk cows. They're sort of friendly. I mean, you can pet them and stuff, but they're not real friendly. That would be what somebody would need to do. Holstein is a great milk cow. They're pretty big. But I'm going to sell them because I have enough milk cows and I don't need that many. So I'm going to sell them for $7.50 a piece, and you'll have to come get them. And now would be a great time because they can be bred probably around the first of the year would be safe, wouldn't it? They're going to be a year old. So
they're a year old now.
Yeah, they're a year old now. So they could be bred right now. And don't ask me to do it. I'm not going to do it. You would have to have the man come out to your place and breed them there. It's about a $30 bill to have that done, and you can pick out whatever kind of semen you want. And I would recommend this is a milk cow, so you're going to want to use a beef breed, sort of like Angus or Wagyu or Hereford, something like that. Get them bred. I can give you the name of the guy that does it. Of course, if you're coming here from way over in Minnesota, you wouldn't be able to do that. You'd have to get a guy over there. And then you'll have a calf in 9 months, and you'll be milking your cow in 9 months. So there you go. If there's any questions about that, ask the questions here about, how much milk we get and all that. I won't go into that. All right. That's about it for housekeeping. We did talk last week about maybe doing a Zoom call, and we were kind of fleshing that out. And somebody gave us some input and said that it would probably be good if it was uh, specific to what word am I looking for?
One topic.
Yeah, topics specific. So if we had say 6 people on a Zoom call and it was a 60-minute call or 90-minute call and everybody paid $20 to get in or $25 to get in, then you can ask specific questions and we can stay with that line of questioning. Let's say it's pastured poultry. Let's say it's grazing. Let's say that it's butchering beef. Let's say it's butchering pigs. Let's say it's and so on. And so what we'll need is we'll need input if that is something that you are interested in, even if you if you're interested in it, give us some input down below as to what you would want to discuss and what you think is a fair price for 90 minutes with, say, 5, 6 other people. Okay. Let's get some input on, because we might be on to something with that. It might be a way to really get this information out further and wider than this method here, because we bounce around on a lot of things and we only go for an hour. Usually we go for an hour and a half, but we say it's an hour. And so I would like to do that. Another thing that I would like to do is I'd like to do more anyone can farm on the road homestead hog harvests. We did 2 this year, 1 here and 1 at another host farm, but I would like to do more than that. It's really productive. If you're the host farm, you charge the participants whatever you want, and then we charge you. And so if this is something that you're interested in, of course, you have to have pigs because we're not going to bring, but we bring just about everything else. And we can discuss that via a Zoom call, which, maybe in a month or so, when we get people interested in that and say, hey, I'd like to find out more about this. What's it going to take to do this? How do I fit into this? And so on. It's real good if you've been to our class, because then you know kind of what you're up against. It's a 3-day class, and we have it pretty well lined out. We have books and all the stuff that you need for it. So it's pretty decent. And as the host farm, you do make pretty good money doing it. Actually make excellent money for a 3-day shot. Plus you get educated, you get your pigs butchered, and we are trying to line you up so that you can perform this without me and Jill being there. The idea is we're training our replacements. That's the whole idea. Okay. So I'm going to start off with a question, and I got it from a good friend of mine down in Indiana. Just asked me a short time ago today. And I said, like a smart guy, I said, oh, if you want to answer that question, you're going to have to come to the question and answer. Okay, so Robert Freeman is with us. Good. I'm glad you're here. All right, so the question was, can I lend any information? Oh, okay, let me fill you in on this. Robert Freeman is the guy whose barn burnt down.
The ducks burned it down.
And it was but they're not sure if it was. But I always harp on people about.
It's a good story.
It's a good story. Well, okay. About heat lamps, electric heat lamps. They're very, very dangerous. And Robert's barn burnt to the ground. And it was, he lives on his grandpa's place. And it was tragic. He lost everything. So anyway, he's going to rebuild. And when he rebuilds, he wants to put in a butcher shop / food processing area, right? And that makes a ton of sense. If you're going to do canning, if you're going to do butchering, any of those things, a lot of those things are kind of messy, and keep your kitchen for the family meals and breakfasts and things like that. Don't invade your kitchen with the mess of half a hog up on the kitchen table. So he wanted to know if I could give him any pointers on that. I think that the more facility you're able to build into your processing area in your barn, within the barn, then the more things that you will be able to accomplish later on. And as I have gone through this process, I got a really, really good example of the way that you should approach this. Okay. Back in 82, I was working on an airplane for Lockheed Airplane Company. I was a spry young lad at the time, and the man that designed the airplane, or parts of the airplane, and some people would argue he is one of the all-time great aircraft designers of our time, is a man by the name of Kelly Johnson. He's passed away now, but he came in to brief us, and I was on night shift, and he was standing up there, and he was telling us about the facts of life, and how he is really proud to be able to be able to design military aircraft, but he still thinks that crop dusters are far more productive. But he told us that you will notice there is room in that airplane where there's nothing there, and he says because we don't have the components to put there. It hasn't been invented. He says, but the path that we're on, I know it will be invented. And I've left space in the aircraft for those components. And I thought that's really forward looking. He was 80 years old at the time. And I don't know if he ever did see those components go into that particular aircraft. I don't know, because I lost track of that airplane. But as I have done what I do here, I always think, well, am I building to suit what I'm doing right now? Or am I building to suit what I'm going to be doing later on? And I think that's what you have to do. You have to build for what the possibilities are. So you may say, well, gee, I'm never gonna butcher a beef. That's hard. That's I don't know how to do that. You don't now. But once you've got a few pigs under your belt, you'll say, well, a beef is just a. Can you go someplace else? It's just a great big, pig, let's say. And in order to process that, it's way bigger, way heavier, and he's got to go. So be thinking that. I would think along those lines. And I would think if you went through the textbook that we push a lot, the Reader's Digest Back to Basics, Robert, if you went through that and you started to pick out, oh, I want to be able to do this, I want to be able to do that, I want to be able to do that. You pick the different processes, the homesteading processes that you want to be able to do, and then build accordingly. And if you decide that you're going to need, X amount of counter space, go X amount plus 50%. Here, I got it. I'm going to show off. Okay. This is, I'll tell you about this in a minute. And if you think that if you're going to put a rail in for butchering and you think you want to put it at, say, 14 feet, put it at 16 feet. Because I'm telling you, you're always lower than you really think you are. I mean, you always have less space than you think you do. And I've put in several rails and thought, oh, this one's high enough. Never high enough, honestly. It's like you almost have to go about 16 feet, really, to pick a beef up. And then, you get your block and tackle, and then you gambrel under that. And you're going to want to be up high. You're going to want to make it so that Well, I think if I was going to help you design it, which I'm willing to do, I would want the dirty work to happen outside. So your killing area would be outside where you do the skinning and gutting and all that. That's outside. And then by the time you rail something into the inner shop, that's where you're doing your canning, your uh, that's where you're doing your packaging, maybe labeling, stuff like that. Although you may not do that for your homestead, but we do. We label stuff, with a date and a time and all that stuff. So we kind of know when it was processed. Um, you're going to want to have your freezers inside. You're going to want your inner shop where the water comes into the barn. You're going to want that heated. I mean, even if you can just keep it at 35 degrees or 38 degrees most of the time, but then when you want to work in there in the wintertime, it's a place where you can go and be productive, be able to bring it up to 60 to work in. I would not be too hasty in designing this. I would really think it through, and I would get with your favorite consultant here and really think it through, because this facility that you build will serve you for many years, and it will be very, very productive. It'll be a place where you can train your kids how to do these things, and it can't be underestimated the importance of having a processing area, to wash vegetables, to cut vegetables, can. Uh, what else do we do in the shop? We make pickles. Uh, we render lard down.
Exhausted.
Make sausage, do all of our meat salting, meat slicing, grinding of meat. All of our hamburgers made there. We do all our chicken processing there, cutting up chickens. We do a lot in that shop. That thing really has served us really, really well. Okay, so if there's more questions, let's hear them. Questions, can we have them in caps too? And keep them coming. I'm going to shut up for a minute and see what people want to know about.
Yeah. Sean asked, what do you do when snow drifts cover up the electric fence? I have fencing on the other side.
Sean, do you have woven wire on the other side or something like that? You probably do.
Yeah, he says he has fencing. So
Yeah, that's a good question. And people ask me that a lot. The way I fence is I put 39-inch woven wire.
oh yes.
Okay. I use Red Brand. It's middle of the road stuff. It's not the high tensile stuff. I just have never gotten into high tensile wire. So that's what I use, and I keep putting my fence posts closer and closer. Now I have them at about 5 paces, because you have less of a sag in between. At first, I was cheap, and I would put them like 10 paces, and I'd have this great big sag, but I was saving money. You got to look at the fences that you build. They're going to be there when you check out. So that could be, 50 years. So spend the money on your fences. Don't skimp on fences. And then I put a strand of electric 1 foot in and 1 foot up. And that's what works for us. And the pigs never go even close to the woven wire because the electric stops them. But then in the wintertime, like you're saying, like Sean's saying, it gets drifted over. But in the wintertime, they don't really want to go on the other side of the fence. Mine don't. They don't. There's nothing on the other side of the fence that's not on the inside of the fence. And they don't put out effort unless there's something in it for them. So my fencers right now are off. And I don't say anything to the pigs, but they're so used to staying within them that I don't have a problem. But I know what you're saying, because the snow is going to go over it. We had snow here one year that was the drift-inch woven wire, and it was so high that by the time it was packed down, I had a big boar at the time. His name was Playboy. You might remember him from a long time ago. And he walked right over the fence and out. And then the Great Pyrenees dog that we had at the time, Minnie, did not like him being out, and she, her and
Lily.
Lily went after him, and he got them both pretty good with his tusks. They have a tusk that comes down and then up, and he got the both of them really, really good, right to the ribs, both of them. Minnie worse than Lily, and it was a mess. It was really a mess. But you didn't ask me about that. So.
But that's the only time that we've really had to worry
Yeah,
about. As long as they have food and bedding and what they want in the fence,
they're
there's
not
nothing outside that
There's nothing
entices them.
outside. No, no.
In fact, Playboy was just after girls. You know,
Yeah,
girls in another pen.
yeah. There was girls in another pen, which I can relate to.
Better be careful there.
And now that my tree's broken off.
Paul wanted to know, what kind of hut would you use for your 30 to 40 feeder pigs in your paddocks? And was it portable?
Yeah. If Paul's asking about feeder pigs, you know, and the way we do it, we keep everything. Everything is movable except the fences, because in my case, I like to get in there with equipment and stir up the dirt and replant. So I don't want anything in the way if I can help it. It's not always doable, but and for 30 or 40, that's a lot of beings. What I have is two oil tanks that have been cut in half. They've been cut longitudinally, and these are probably 20-foot long. And I think when the oil tank was in one piece, it would have been probably 12 feet in diameter. So they're pretty good size. And when they were cut off, they made really good shelters. One of them I have mounted on railroad ties, and it's permanent. But it's in my pen that I use for my sows. And when the girls get kind of older and more mature, they don't beat stuff up so bad. The younger ones will push stuff around and they will beat stuff up bad. Something that big, with the tractor that I have, it is not easily moved around. I cannot pick it up with my tractor and move it. If I have to pick it up, I have to get somebody else to do it with a bigger machine than I have. And I don't know where you are. Is this Paul? Okay, where you are, I don't think you get the snow like we do, but you probably get the cold. He's in Kansas. And I know you get tornadoes in Kansas. Everybody knows that. It would take more than one shelter for sure, but you could build something and put it on skids that you can pull with a tractor around. I have a lot of equipment on skids. I use 6x6 pressure treated timbers that I get from a local place, and I build all kinds of stuff on skids and move it around. So, you could buy porta huts, but they're expensive, and they get beat up. If you've got heritage breed animals like mine, hairy ones, they don't really need something over them. They just need a windbreak. And there have been winters where I've just dropped round bales of straw out there, and they've had no shelter at all in the pen that they were in. They could access a shelter, but they choose not to. So I hope that helps. Windbreak is very good. If you want to get busy building stuff, just make sure you don't put a floor in it, because they'll drag stuff in there and you'll have to get it out and they'll crap in it. Another question?
Yep. Haven wanted to know, we're going to try pasture poultry next year, maybe 300 at most in our first batch. What equipment should we invest in for that? If we like it, we'll grow. Is a chicken plucker worth it?
Oh, yeah, chicken plucker is definitely worth it. Definitely. If you're saying you're going to do 300 at one time or 300 over the course of the summer, it's definitely, um, two different animals. 300 at one time, I can really only speak from the experience that I have. We use a 10 by 12 chicken tractor that we build. It's my design, but you're sure welcome to copy it if you want. And they hold 120 square feet. 75 birds and 120 square feet is about right. And I got that information from Joel Salatin, and he is right. He's 100% correct with that. If you have less birds in there, then they stay right close to the feeder and they don't go out around the edges. If you have more birds in there, they seem to attack each other. Go figure, but they're chickens. So 75 chickens in 120 square feet is what you want. You only want the chicken tractor to be about 2 feet high because you're not going to go in there.
He's reading Pastured Poultry Profits right now.
Oh, okay. Then there you go. A plucker is definitely worth it. And yeah, that's how we got into this whole thing. Is I bought a plucker from an Amish guy. It didn't have a motor on it, and our vet saw us doing chickens, and then said, "Would we do some for the youth show?" And that's where it all began. So this is our 15th year of doing it. So if you're going to do pastured poultry, and you're going to sell the birds, I would assume, or share them or whatever, then on the side you can have a little chicken processing business, and that's between you and the customers that you process for. And if you have a plucker, it sure makes things easy. The one that I have right now, I can put 10 birds in at a time, and it does a nice job. If you're going to buy one, I would assume you're probably going to buy one of the smaller ones with the plastic barrel on top, and they'll do 3 or 4, and they'll do a good job. And that's really a good place to start. And then brooding is something. I did my brooding the way the Salatins did their brooding at first, but then I realized that I was doing a lot of extra work, and it was stinky, and I was taking up space in my building, and sanitizing in between batches became problematic because then it was chemicals, and I didn't want to do that. So I built a brooder that again was on 6x6 skids, and it had no floor in it, and insulated walls, insulated roof, have skylight on it. I can skid it with my tractor, and it's 8x10, and I've got a little shelf on it where I have a propane bottle, and then inside there's a hover heater hanging there. And a hover heater is you can find them in like Stromberg's magazines. Stromberg's, you look them up online. It's a propane heater. They got natural gas and they got propane. The one that I got is propane. I actually have 3 of them, and I only use one, right? So if you live near me, maybe we can do some business. I think they were $200 a piece, but the thing works flawlessly. It's on a thermostat, so it'll shut off, and you can. Anyway, the benefit of doing it that way is in between batches that you brood, and you can easily brood in that one. You can brood 300 easily. We designed it to brood 400 or 5, I think, but then it worked good at 4. Then in between batches, you just move the brooder to a fresh fresh ground, that will have fresh grass on it, and then your next load of chicks goes right in there, and it's not a problem. So yeah, I would definitely invest in that. I mean, it's a great place to start. I mean, that book is invaluable. All of the Salatin books are good. They all are.
All right. Robert Veronda wanted to know, how do you avoid cold shortening in chickens?
Cold shortening? This guy, for everybody listening, this guy is Marine, and I think he's messing with me.
No, maybe.
No, Robert, I'm not
Yeah.
reading you. I don't know what that is. Cold shortening. I don't know what that is.
So
And-
maybe he can.
Yeah, can you enlighten us,
Comment
and
and-
we'll get back to it. Like, enlighten us what cold shortening is. I think he's in California too, so you know.
All right, then. Oh, how many loaves of bread do you figure to a pig
What do you mean per day?
per head per day? Yeah.
Per head per day? As many as they'll eat. I would say when you're feeding pigs, you want to feed them so that when they're done and they walk away from where the feed is, that there's only a little bit there. But if they don't walk away from it and they're still kind of screaming at you, that means you didn't give them enough. If there's still a ton there the next day, you gave them too much. So I don't know what to tell you. It depends how big the pig is. I mean, if they're just little pigs and you give them 4 loaves, they'll never eat it. But if they're big monsters and you give them 4 loaves, they might be like, hey, where's the rest of it? You know, what else you got? So it's a little hard to know when you just say pig. Is it a big pig, little pig? Did he say what size pig? No.
But your standard of, if they're still looking for food, you got to give them more.
Give them more.
If there's still some the next day, you
You
give
gave
them
them too much.
and you get a feel for it.
And if you gave them too much, doesn't matter. They're going to eat it. So it's not like something's going to go wrong. And if you give them too little, then you come out the back door and you hear them screaming at you, like, hey, hey. So you'll figure it out. All right.
Is there Mike
Mike,
Finn?
Finn.
Is there a way to feed meat chickens and turkeys cheaper? Maybe buying in bulk or making our own. Oh, okay.
Is that Robert?
Yeah. Go ahead and do Mike's.
All right,
and
Mike.
go back to...
Both of those things would bring your feed costs down. Like when you buy anything, but let's say chicken feed, when you buy it in a 50-pound bag, you're paying for some guy to stand there and put it in a bag and then sew it up. So somebody's got to do that. That guy's got to be paid. And so the price of it goes up. If you're buying by the bulk, somebody's got to drive the truck to your house, but usually they're going to drop several tons and it pencils out. You come out better. But somebody's still got to pay for that truck and the fuel and the driver, right? If you can figure out a way to, if you got a 3/4 ton pickup or a 1/2 ton pickup or even a 1/4 ton pickup, if you figure out a way to get to a place where they make it and you can pull under and you work out a deal with them to where if you say, hey, I'm going to be there at this time and I need this much chicken feed, and you get there because they'll be waiting for you because, you know, everything's got to be lined up at the mill. That's why they don't really like doing that. They'll do it for me if I pull in there with a 10-yard dump. Because it's 10 yards. I mean, that's a lot of feed. But they would rather have their driver bring it to me because he can bring it when he gets good and ready. So I don't know if you can swing that with what you're doing or where your feed company is, where the feed mill is. The other thing that you talked about was grinding your own, for sure. I mean, if you get a feed mill, of course, that's tough because you've got to pay for that. Let's say you have one though, there's an old one on the farm that you can use. That's good. Or you can get an old one at an auction or something like that. The one I have is a 1928 case, and I turn it with a belt, one of those wide belts off the side of my 46 Alice Chalmers tractor. But all of those pieces, it took me a while to get those pieces together. And then the grinder, I had to have a series of pipes on it and a cyclone, and it took me time to put that together. And right now it's in pieces because my cows got to it and they like to itch on it. And I'm not using it anymore anyway. I mean, I have several times I've ground my own feed. But then this thing called a grinder mixer, which is a self-contained unit that you turn with a tractor, a PTO on a tractor. And those things are pretty good, but they're expensive. I mean, you can get a pretty nice one for about $5,000. But then you'd be, or I shouldn't say but, I should say, and then you would be bringing in, say, grain, whole grains, let's say barley by the truckload or the semi-load. Then you got to put it someplace. So you got to have a bin to put it in. So you start putting this together, and you can see that your overhead's going to go up really quickly. And then you say, yeah, but I'm just going to feed millions of chickens. Well, what if it doesn't really work out? Is the overhead and the payments on that is that going to work? Or is that going to eat up all your profit? What some guys have done is they've put in a grinder mixer, and then they have, let's say, 2 big bins on their place. And they'll buy semi-loads of whole grains, and then they'll auger that into the grinder mixer. They'll bag up feed, and they'll sell feed. And then they wind up competing with the feed mill. And that's not good either, because the feed mill a lot of times can get kind of angry about that. So I think you need to think that through. Probably the best thing to do is if you had a bin and you could get the products delivered to you in bulk. If you don't have a bin, then the totes that we always talk about, are they the ABC totes or the UBC totes? Those big white totes that have a cage around them. I can get those things for nothing. All I want. I could get a semi-load of them if I wanted, and they have waterborne paint in them that you can just rinse out with a hose. And we cut the tops of them off. And if I had to, I have grain bins here though, so that I've scrounged. You can put grain in those and then pick those up and put them in a building. They'll hold almost a ton of grain, right? And it's a pretty cheap way to go. And then you can just scoop it out of there. But before you go making big investments, think it through. Talk to somebody that's done it, and so everything that's involved there. You want to keep, your costs low as possible. Read Salatin's books. I wanted to have a fuel tank here because I thought, well, I want the truck to come and fill my fuel up just so I could have it, I guess. I don't know. But he said, no, you don't want to do that. Buy gas cans, put them on a trailer, go to the gas station and get your fuel. You can control it better, for one, because if you've got teenage kids like I do, and there's a big thing full of fuel out there, you're not going to control that fuel. I don't care what you do.
Motorcycles and snowmobiles, all.
Yeah, and cars and no. So gas cans are a better way to go. That's an example. So if you paid money to have a grain bin put in, you'd have to keep that thing full in order to make it work. And you're not really sure where you're going to go. Mike, you're new at this, and We had a lot of false starts, a lot of things we thought were great ideas that we no longer do. And my wife was always a real stickler about borrowing money because I would say, "Hey, we need to borrow money," and we no longer do those things anymore. So it's a good thing we didn't build hog houses. Good thing we didn't.
Another thing that we've done is just use the same feed. We just get a chicken grower, and that's what we use to start our chicks. That's what we use for our turkeys. We don't get
A bunch of different
high
feeds.
octane different
No.
feeds for everything, and it's a one size fits all, and they
Yeah.
all do great on it.
Yeah. Okay, I forgot what I was going to say, but let's go.
Okay, Robert Veronda's question.
All right, Robert.
So, Haven looked it up quick for us. Cold shortening refers to meat becoming tough due to being cooled too fast after slaughter.
I thought maybe you were trying to
So-
stump me, man. And you got me. Stump the dummy. I didn't know what that was. Cold shortening. Being cooled too quick.
Right. If it cools down to below 50 degrees, before rigor sets in.
Rigor mortis.
Yeah.
Huh. No, I never heard of that. And I don't even know how I could apply that to what we do.
Well, we don't use ice to cool. So
Yeah.
it's just, what, 40, 45 degree well
Yeah,
water?
we used well water, and I haven't even temped it in a long time. Is
He
it
says he wouldn't
48?
do that to you.
Yes, you would. I think our water's like 48, 45 to 48. So we don't ice them, and we bring them down with the well water. And what we use is those Brute trash cans. We get them from Home Depot, and then I put a drain in the bottom of them, and you can roll them around. They work really good, and there's a top you can put on them. They work really good, and you're not committed to anything. And if you get out of chickens, you could use them for trash cans. Well, I'll be into trash one of these days, and just cool them down with well water. Or if you're on city water, I would think it would be probably pretty cool too. And then we put them in a cooler, and the cooler goes down to, I think, 38. So we never have that problem. I've never heard of that before, and our chickens are great. I love eating our chickens.
Yeah. Some people put them into ice or ice water to cool them
Really?
quickly.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So don't.
Like in the mobile things, I guess I've heard of that.
Okay.
I just
So don't do that. No ice.
yeah. Keep your process
No ice, no cold shortening.
All right. Joe Brown wanted to know how often you feed your pigs. He's been doing it twice a day.
Oh, I do it once a day, Joe. Once a day.
And you give
Yeah.
them, and then you just use your standard of
Yeah.
your feedback, and you'll know if you fed them enough at that
Yeah.
one time.
Yeah. And, I think I'm guilty of overfeeding them a lot because I always like to give myself a cushion. Okay, we just did these beef, and there was lots of suet, lots of fat, and it was beautiful, but I just can't use that much of that beef fat. So a lot of it is going to go to the birds, and then a whole bunch of it went to the pigs today, and they make real good use of it. So I know there's a lot on the ground out there that they didn't eat, but it's not critical if there's food on the ground out there. It's not that critical.
And if you're worried about waste, then you just pay attention and adjust as you
Yeah.
go.
If you're buying commercial feed, then there's going to be waste. Feed that's ground, because it mixes with the dirt, and then the pigs can't get it. And they'll always stick their nose in a trough, and they'll throw it all over the place, and it mixes with mud, especially, and it becomes something that they just can't eat. That's why we recommend. Well, I don't really recommend. I mean, for me, I would rather use the Mangalitsa pig because they'll eat hay. So I can feed them a lot like I do cows. I can drop a bale out there, and if I had to go away for a weekend, they're fine. They're fine. They'll eat the hay. They might not like it as much as bread, but they're not going to starve. They'll be fine. They'll even eat straw. They like straw.
Oh, they go through and find the grain in it.
Yeah,
It's a treasure hunt.
yeah, they do.
Archuleta Bear wanted to know how's it going with the bunnies.
Pretty good. We get kind of a slow start on them. We had a couple of false alarms, where they were supposed to kindle, but they didn't. And then we had one that kindled after we got home from a music festival, and we hadn't even taken her out of the trailer, and she kindled and lost that whole bunch. So I mean, it's going. I have them situated, and I'm not going to give up on it. I have two sets of breeding pairs, or I have, yeah, two sets of breeding pairs. And I'm not breeding them right now because I'm just not. I'm going to wait until it gets a little warmer in the spring. And my plan is to just breed them and get out of them what I need for my freezer, and then close it down for the winter. And I think that's nice about the homesteading model is there is a season for everything. There was a time on this farm where we had broiler chickens around, every month of the year. We had them in the clear span, and then in the summer we would put them out on pasture. And, in the wintertime, it's rough. And working with livestock is tough in the wintertime. So it's a good idea to have seasonal things like pastured poultry, definitely seasonal. Grazing, seasonal. I'm not grazing now. I got kicked off with a snowstorm. There's 8 inches of snow on the ground, and it fell on wet ground. So I said, well, that's my answer right there. Because if I let the cows out on it, they will tear up the fields. They will tear it up. So we didn't quite make it, but I think I was about 2 weeks shorter than where I thought I wanted to be. But anyway, did I answer that question?
Paul's full of questions. Okay, he's got another one here for you. When you first started planting radish, were they smaller than the radishes you grow now in your pig paddocks? Do you feel like the paddocks grow better now? If so, how long before you noticed a difference in their growth?
I never did small radishes out in the fields. I always did. That was a learning curve right there, Paul, because we would get who do we buy from? What's the name of that place? Out in Maine.
Fedco.
Fedco. And the radish was a forage radish. And I was reading a lot about foraging and all this stuff. And forage was in the name. So I said, well, let's try those. And so we got them and we grew them. And they were this great big long radish. And they looked just like the radish that would grow in the garden that was called a daikon radish. And we pulled them out, cut them, opened them up, ate them. Hey, they even taste the same. The tops look the same, but these are forage radishes and these are daikon radishes. The daikon radishes come in little packages that cost you $6 a piece. And the forage radish comes in big sacks like this that cost you $6 for 30 pounds. So I'm not sure what's going on there, but those are the ones that we use. Now, we always use the forage radishes or the daikons, whatever they're calling them. And I think it's the best thing going that we've come across. The fields seem to increase by using them because what the pigs will do is they will follow that long tuber down to the tip of it to get it once they start eating it. And when they do that, they're bringing the soil from down deep, like maybe a foot or maybe a little deeper than that, 18 inches or so. They'll bring that up on top, and they'll bring highly organic material down deep, and then it all gets mixed around, and the topsoil just increases, or the good soil, the good loamy soil. So I do have one field that I planted with those one year. Pigs took every one of them out, and then I wound up putting sheep on them last year, and it went back to grass, if you can believe that. I don't know why that happened, but it did. So I don't know. Am I answering this?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, it's one of my favorite forages is the daikon radish. There's a lot of problems with purple top that people have. Purple top turnips, people will grow them, and they they get mad at me. There was one girl on the internet got really mad at me because she grew several acres of them, and her pigs won't eat them. And it was as if I had done it intentionally just to destroy her farm operation. But somebody else chimed in and said, wait till it gets cold, then they'll get sweet, and then they'll eat them. But maybe they won't if you're feeding them hog chow, because hog chow tastes really good to them. And it's designed to taste really good to them, just the way Cheetos taste good to us. And they'll make you fat for sure. So, feeding forages to pigs takes a little bit of doing, and you got to realize that these are pigs, and if they don't get what they want, they will eat what is available. It just may take a couple of days, but they're not going to starve to death. They're not going to starve to death.
No, pigs won't starve.
No.
Nope. Paul also wanted to know, can you give your pigs leftover deer carcasses after cleaning a deer?
Oh, yeah. Yep. We've been doing that for years. Yeah. Pigs are omnivores. So by all means, by all means.
One way of working the natural cycle, the sustainable regenerative cycle.
Yeah. If pigs were running around if this was the Pacific Rim where they're from, where swine originates, and they found a dead anything out in the woods, they'd eat it. They'd eat it. And places like Texas where they have feral swine, and I'm going to put them in quotations too, because a lot of people think that was
bones and everything.
Yeah, bones and everything. A lot of people think that the feral swine there are it's just an out of control thing. Well, it's propagated. It is propagated, and it was started by us. I mean, humans started it. And then there are ranches down there that actually grow them and sell them to people to let them go on preserves so they can hunt them. So, the thought that the notion that it's out of control and can't get control of it is absolutely insane. These are human beings we're talking. If we want to eradicate anything, we can do it. But anyway, we're not asking that question, I don't think. But down there where the feral swine are pretty thick, if they find a dead animal, oh yeah, you bet they'll eat it. And that was one of the arguments that we made here. I wound up speaking all over the state on the topic of feral swine, and the state was saying they're out of control. You're going to be sorry. And I would speak to large groups of people, and I mean large groups of people, and I would ask for a show of hands. How many of you saw a dead deer on the way here? And like half the crowd saw a dead deer. They're everywhere. I mean, people would get hitting them with cars all over the place. And I said, how many of you saw a feral pig eating off one of those carcasses? And never, with only one exception, there was only one exception, did anybody say that they had seen a feral swine eating off of a dead deer on the side of the road. And the woman that said that she did, she worked for the Attorney General, and it wasn't her that saw it, it was her Uncle Tony, and it was back in 73, right? So if we had feral swine, you would see them along the side of the road eating off of dead deer. They would, especially in the wintertime here in Michigan, where the snow in the woods is 4 feet and a pig is only 2 feet. You know, how are they supposed to swim through that? They would be in the roadways. Everybody would see them because that's where the food would be. Anyway, it's ridiculous. All right.
All right, more on Robert's thing. He had a huge loss of chickens.
Oh.
Right, so he wants his remaining 4 out of 22 to turn out good.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm not sure, they started sneezing and dropped like flies. Started with 22, have 4 left. They're 7 to 8 weeks and about 5 pounds now. So that's 5 pounds live weight probably.
Yeah.
So they're small.
They're small.
Let's see. It's been cold, which means nights mid-30s,
Yeah.
40s to 60s in the day. He has a heat lamp in the chicken tractor for them and tarped off to stop the draft.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Coccidia and then the
well, it usually starts with a respiratory, right? And the respiratory a lot of times is because there's not enough airflow. With broiler chickens, cold is not your enemy. Heat is your enemy. And they can deal with cold. You won't lose them to cold. A heat lamp, and it's just going to 30, is not necessary. It could go way further than that, and a heat lamp is not necessary. That's not going to keep them healthy. Usually what happens, it starts off.
Sick and have a fever, they'll look like they're cold.
They will, because they'll be kind of like this, and the comb gets kind of blue, and that is an indication that they have pneumonia. And the comb is not bright red because of the blood that courses through there is not oxygenated, right? So when you see that, the only way that I know to get around that would be with an antibiotic. And I don't like to do that. I don't like to do that. But what happens is if you don't, and their system gets slightly compromised, then, you know, it's like I was saying, when the potato bugs come to your garden, there's a protozoa in chickens. It's called coccidia. Yeah, it's coccidia protozoa. So when the animal starts to die, that coccidia is saying, okay, now it's my job. I'm going to eat this thing. And so the coccidia starts to eat the bird from the inside. And then the bird can't gain weight because the coccidia begins in the intestines. So all the food that the birds are eating, they don't get anything out of it. And then you start seeing red poop coming out. If you had 22 and you're down to 4.
Yeah, he said you described it to a T.
Yeah. I would start over again. I'd butcher them right now. Have yourself Cornish hen. If you like the looks of the carcass when you get them opened up. If you don't, start over. And start in another place. Forget the heat lamps. Make sure you brood them someplace that's a little different. And I wonder if where you are, they sell medicated feed, because they sure used to around here. They don't in this state anymore.
Yeah, they do.
Don't you have to get a vet come see?
You can get medicated feed starter down at the.
Oh, okay. Well, we don't use it, but some people do. Yeah, I think you're going to have to start over again. And don't get discouraged, because that's been going on for a long time. Those birds, the Cornish cross broilers, that is a bird that has been developed for concentrated animal feeding operations. And the way they do it in those CAFOs is they start them on a subtherapeutic dose of antibiotic right from day one.
Oh,
And you don't want to do that.
they were
But you know
on
what?
medicated feed when he got them at
You know
3
what?
weeks.
Start over again, but don't use them. Use the Freedom Rangers. They're a tougher bird, and they're better equipped to survive in an environment where you're not going to have them on antibiotic from the start. The medicated feed that you get is actually to fight off coccidiosis. So it's got amprolium in it if you read it. And we don't have that anymore. Well, it's treatable. We treat it with biochar. We put it in their feed. And if you can't find a source of biochar, don't want to make it. If you just buy what they call lump charcoal from like Gordon Foods or wherever you can find that, not briquettes, but just lump charcoal, and break up the pieces that will break up, and put that in the feed. It might fix your coccidiosis. It might.
Or if
That's
you
what
can
we
find
do.
a good source of biochar.
Yeah. Or learn how to make biochar. Down south, they call it biochar. But New England, they call it biochar. Are there any more questions?
Um, no.
No.
Paul wanted to know when the sow's pregnant, that's still okay? I assume that was follow up on the deer question.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're omnivores. Matter of fact, if where you are, they don't care if you stop and pick up dead deer off the road. It's a great source of protein for your pigs. Around here, they'll kill a deer and they'll leave it out on the side of the road, especially one with a nice rack, and then they'll hide until they can catch somebody taking it. That's what they do around here. That's what the conservation officers do around here. And I know because they popped a friend of mine doing it, which is kind of ridiculous, I think, but they got to catch you doing something. Any more
Alright,
questions?
That's all I've got.
Are there any more questions?
Robert said thanks. He'll definitely try again in February.
Robert, you're in California, is that right? Yeah, okay. Me and Robert have been friends a long time on Facebook. Okay, if there are no more questions, I'm going to sign off. It's been great. Can we get some input as far as the Zoom call goes? If people would give us some input on that, because we'll do it. And maybe we'll put together a list of hot topics and see who would sign up for it and stuff like that. Because we'll do it. I mean, we have the time in the winter time to do that. And I want to hear from people what things they plan to do that are kind of new and different and things like that. I want to develop more of our fish growing capabilities. I have a couple ponds in this place, and I'd like to dredge them out so I get more capacity. And I'd love to grow fish. I just think that would be fun as anything to do. And I like to eat fish. And okay, somebody's going to do Archuleta Bear's going to do a fish pond next year.
No, she wondered if you're going to do the fish pond next year. You
Well,
just answered the question.
Okay, well, I already have, one of my ponds I put bass in, and then we took 2 of them out this spring, and we put them in, and they were just little things like this. And then they went over winter, and they cleared all the goldfish out of there. It's not a very big pond. And then this spring they were this big, but they were still a little skinny. So I know next year they're going to be much bigger. I have heard that it is a very I've heard 2 different accounts. I've heard that rabbits are the best feed conversion on the farm, but I think that's of the 4-footed variety of animals. But I've also heard from an old friend of mine out in Montana that they used to grow trout every year. They would get them. They'd make a trip and get these, and they didn't have big ponds, but they would pull some massive trout out of there and fill up the bathtub with them, and then they'd butcher them out, put them in the freezer, so they had fish all the time. And I think I would like to do that. I really think I'd like to do that. And then alligators. It's on the list. Okay. Who just said when we bring silver down?
Robert Freeman.
Robert Freeman did, huh? Does that mean silver?
He better call you.
You better call me if you're serious, bro. You better call me. All right. I'm going to sign off. This is Mark from Baker's Green Acres. Get out there and make it happen. And remember, anyone can farm. See you next week.